Hi, everyone. So, first of all, thank you. I mean, it's a great pleasure to make a presentation in front of such large, vibrant audience who are actively participating into discussions, raising questions. So, it is really awesome for me. I'm relatively new to the Postgres community, but I'm really loving it. I'm really loving it. So, as you can see, today we are going to talk about taking Postgres to the next level for the enterprise. Though it is more of a sponsored presentation, I'm supposed to talk about Fujitsu and all, but I would like to divide it into two parts. First, giving a presentation on what Fujitsu is really thinking about Postgres in general, how we see Postgres, and then talking about what Fujitsu is really doing on top of Postgres for its enterprise-grade customers. So, to break the ice, a quick introduction about myself. I'm currently handling the deliveries of Fujitsu Australia Postgres Labs, both for Fujitsu Enterprise version as well as any open source contributions that we are making in the community. I have approximately 15 years of experience working across organizations in US, UK, Finland, Vietnam, Japan, Australia, to name few, which gave me a pretty much experience on digital domain as well as telecommunication domain. So I do have a touch on what customers in general face, what kind of problems they deal with, which I can leverage while working on various project deliveries. In a nutshell, I love programming. I love automation. I keep on reading stuff, Kubernetes, CI, CD, and now I love Postgres ecosystem. Talking about what Fujitsu currently is seeing about Postgres, we see Postgres as the new Linux. That's the crux of it. What we feel is Postgres has all those ingredients of doing to the database what Linux did to the operating system market. So we all know that Postgres is actually a project which was derived from a university project. And just like Linux, it has a vibrant community. It has dedicated community. Somewhere in the T talk, I was actually talking to Stephen Frost that people are so fond of Postgres community that they are not ready to leave organization if the organization is working for Postgres, but they can change the jobs if the organization stop talking about Postgres. So that's how vibrant, that's how diverse, that's how dedicated the community is. Needless to say, there are a variety of distributors. We can see outside stalls, EDB, Second Quadrant, Fujitsu, to name few, and there are plethora of others, right? All these vendors are actually adding to the competition. They are trying their best to meet to the business needs. They are making all sort of extensions, be it PostGIS, be it time series data, or machine learning, for example, and that is helping the community a lot. And that is also helping businesses a lot by driving the cost down and thereby increasing the adaptability or acceptability of the Postgres in the real businesses. And that's actually pushing out some of the proprietary databases as well out of the market. So they are reducing their share. So that's a very good factor about Postgres. But that also raises a question, if I am a CEO or I am a CTO of an organization, what are those things, what I'll really think about while bringing Postgres into my database strategy? So what I'll think, maybe, whether Postgres is really extensible, is it having a good architecture? Am I going to lock into a particular vendor if I really go to the Postgres world? What are the cost savings that I will have? So luckily, for all these things, Postgres is a very good solution. So it is extensible. We all know it handles a multi-model kind of solutions as well. It can talk to a NoSQL world as well. It has independent community, which is driven by developers and users. There is no vendor lock-in. You can anytime come in to a particular vendor. You can jump out of that particular vendor, go to a different distribution of Postgres. And all of these things are offering, or all of these vendors are actually offering flexible licensing models. There are different support models that you can choose and then decide sometime to jump onto different vendor later. Talking about a specific point over here, independent community driven by developers and users. This is very interesting. In a way, that there are many other communities where it is actually driven by the technocrats. They are more technology driven as compared to the business need or the user driven. However, I'm a regular watcher of PSQL hacker community mailing thread as well. What I see, many people are coming from the user groups. They are really talking about the business problems. They are really talking about the kind of challenges that they are facing. And that is what is helping community to go into a direction where the business needs lies. So they are really taking all that democratic or all those steps in a democratic fashion to reach to that area where users would like it to be used. It is not just a contribution by users. There are many vendors who are competing in the market. I mean, that's a very interesting thing that I saw in Postgres community. They are competing in the market for all their sales pitches, but when it comes to the community, they are actually collaborating. So one of such feature that Fujitsu Australia, one of the major feature that we are working about is pluggable storage, which Stephen also mentioned in the morning as one of the first major feature in PG12. So that is one of the features that we are working upon, but actually we are collaborating with other people who are working in other different organizations and to make it possible for PG12. So not just the core, Fujitsu is also working into other communities, just like PG admin, ODBC, JDBC, be it by solving the bugs, reporting the bugs, or giving suggestions. So that is the kind of contribution people are doing in the Postgres community. And I mean, it's such a lovely community, such a lovely ecosystem that people are collaborating and driving a new database into the market, thereby breaking the glass ceiling which other proprietary vendors had brought in. So, but apart from the CIO and CTO thought process, there is another chapter that we also have to think about, that is the enterprise needs. So we all know there are various challenges when a database is deployed into a real enterprise world. So think of database security, think of how fast it is, whether it can do aggregation, how fast aggregations are possible. So there are multiple facets which Fujitsu is also thinking of to meet the enterprise needs. So there are basically 5 facets that Fujitsu think of. Okay. Okay, so there are 5 facets which Fujitsu talks about while we are using Postgres and developing enterprise-grade features on top of it. So open and compatibles, we always make sure that whatever version that we make on top of open source version, that is also open and compatible in a way that a person or if a business is there, he can jump on and off the Fujitsu enterprise version as and when possible, as and when required. Postgres in itself, in the native, support JSON or NoSQL support to an extent, but we also extend it further by adding more extensions on top of it when we deliver Fujitsu Enterprise Postgres, be it PostGIS or Aura FC, Oracle support, be it time series data. So those are the things that we deliver on top of the core open source version. But there are other enterprise things that people talks about. That is about security and governance. That is about how hardened it is, how available it is, and how fast it is, how fast I can execute my queries. So that is where Fujitsu is adding more enterprise-grade features on top of the Postgres. I just want to iterate once again that Fujitsu Enterprise Postgres is not really a fork. It's basically something adding on top of the regular OSS Postgres. Because we love Postgres, we continuously contribute back to the community. So we expect that sooner or later, all these features will also be becoming part of the community down the line. In a nutshell, we have quite a lot of features which talk about governance and data privacy, performance, availability, which I'll talk about in further slides. But on top of the features, we talk about 24/7 global support, web-based deployment solutions, automated HA and DR setup, platform agnostic installation. Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, so picking up one of the enterprise feature that I was talking about, it's about acceleration and analysis. So that particular feature in Fujitsu Enterprise Postgres is all about vertical columnar index or vertical clustered index. What we generally do, as we were speculating that in 13 or maybe 14, we will have columnar storage on top of Postgres. So it is something on similar lines, but it is a little bit more than that. So what is VCI in a short is not just columnar storage. It is talking more of the HTAP requirement, or in other words, hybrid transaction and analytical processing, which means that you can store data, you can do a transaction processing, but you can analyze the data in the real time, which in other words translate to you don't have to do a batch processing or an ETL jobs to transform the data, on top of which you can really generate reports. In Fujitsu Enterprise Postgres, you can actually do both the tasks simultaneously. So if I give a very high-level view of the in-memory column HTAP acceleration, this is the core of it. We have the raw data, and which is in shared buffer. This is the Postgres, or OSS Postgres, which in a synchronous fashion is cached into the memory, and in an asynchronous fashion, it is also converted into a columnar storage. So why I'm emphasizing it, that it's not just columnar storage, it is actually HTAP acceleration. So if there is any aggregation request, it has the capabilities to not just read the data from the cache, which is faster, but once it is transformed into columnar storage data, it has the capability to pick up that as well. Needless to say, it is also cached into the disk, just to make sure that if your system is restarted, it is able to recover it very quickly. One important factor, as we were talking about, there is no vendor lock-in and we allow migrations easily, is the fact that there is no update in the SQL statements. So you continue using your old SQL-based application, but using the VCR feature, the performance is still 5 times faster, as we noted in our tests. So that's one of the things that we believe the enterprise system currently needs, and down the line, Postgres will add these kind of features into the core. High-speed data load is another feature that we work upon. It's the same thing that you have the copy operation, you can read the data from a file and load it into the memory, but we want to accelerate it, as we have seen it by a lot of presentations since morning. We are not talking about MBs of data. We are not talking about GBs of data. We are talking about terabytes of data, right? So if you have really need of loading the data into a database, and if you have a single-threaded application which is loading that data, it may take up days to load the terabytes of data. We have fastened it up. Another very important feature, which cannot be ignored by any enterprise these days, is about security, right? So we know there are a lot of security options, which is given by Postgres, which can use it, and we can make best use of it to make sure that our data is secured as far as possible. But there are some specific niche things that all enterprises are concerned about in the wake of recent hacks, GDPR laws. They want to make sure that their data is not exploitable, not hackable. It should be secured as far as possible. So one of the things that they are concerned about is my data at rest really secure? Or in other words, if somebody breaches my operating system credentials, he's able to hack into the system, he's able to take my data folder, will he be able to exploit all the data which is there in the database, right? So this is what we really work upon, and we deliver a feature called transparent data encryption, which really means that we use 256-bit key to secure all the data which is at rest. So even if a hacker is able to take up the data folder as it is, or wall records for an example, or log files for an example, he will not be able to make a sense out of it. We are also working on improving it even at one notch further by implementing features like PKCS 11, which is an industry standard for storing the keys on top of a, let's say, a hardware token. We are also working on KMIP servers where we can secure the key on a remote KMIP server. So that's the whole lot of it, which I really explained, that you have a database, but it is secured. So only database is actually able to see the data, but when it is at rest, and if it is taken by a hacker, he will not be able to make any sense out of it. So it's really encrypted. I think like in the wake of PCI DSS kind of specifications, where they want to make sure that your data is really secure, it is imperative. We cannot go away without having these kind of features for the enterprise customer. Data masking is yet another feature. It's not just data at rest. It's also about authority roles that we all talk about, whether one of my role can see all data and I want to disable any other user or any other role to see, let's say, credit card data or my customer data or anything of that sort. So that's what whole data masking and data redaction is all about. Without making any changes in your SQL statement, it's a policy-based, a custom-based solution where you can apply a policy on top of your column-based data and make sure that your data is not really readable to any non-authorized person. So he executes a normal SQL statement, he will not be able to see it. However, if there is another role who is authorized to see it, he executes the same SQL statement and he'll be able to see the data. So that's all about data masking and redaction. But it's not just about the production system. It is also useful into test and production separation, where at times we all need the data which is there in the production and we want to run our test cases on top of it. However, the organization don't want to share the data, right, to be used in the test system. So this feature actually enables that as well. It can redact the data or it can mask the data to be used in the testing system. But the story doesn't end over here. So it's all about, okay, we have secured our data at rest, we have made sure that people are not able to see it. But in enterprises, it's a very common practices to have auditing. So what they really want to know is who, when, and what. And or to describe it further, who accessed my data, when he accessed the data, and what he actually saw, right? So there is a concept of audit logging as well in Fujitsu Enterprise to meet this enterprise need, which allows the separation of the server log from the audit log, where all these who, what, when can be resolved. So an auditor can go back and check what is being accessed by whom and when, and on what date, for example. Hardened and available, I think like though many people are working on hardening part, which is making sure that all the systems are working together. So for example, though in community, we are working towards making sure that the system is working, right? There is no breakages, there is no bug, and we fix it as soon as possible. I think like everyone in this room is contributing to that in one way or the other. But there is another combination of it. The other combination is application plus server. So for example, if I have a JDBC application, is my JDBC version really compatible with, let's say, PG11 or PG12? Am I being able to take care of all the new features? Is there a bug in that particular driver? So this whole Postgres ecosystem doesn't end just with the server, but it's, again, ecosystem, where you have to think about all the drivers, all the connectors, and make sure that they are working together. So that's where we work off. So we take all the compatible versions, make sure that they are working together well. There are no bugs or issues. If there are any, at Fujitsu we try to fix it, or at least report it, or get it fixed along with the community. So I just remember one quick issue. There was Postgres, in Postgres 10, there was Scram authentication which was enabled. JDBC driver also had the Scram authentication enabled. So it was 42.2.1 version. The JDBC driver claimed that it is working, but actually it was never packaged. So there was just a small issue of packaging that they didn't check thoroughly. And once we helped community resolve it, the JDBC 42.2.2 version was working with Scram authentication. So these kind of things is something that we really work upon when we are talking about hardening. We make sure that core is working on all sort of platforms like Windows, Solaris, Linux, along with all the drivers and connectors and combinations of it. So that's the hardening part, but availability is also another important factor. It's about availability. It's like how quickly my system is able to recover. if we are taking an analogy of it to Linux, Linux has a variant called CGL, which is carrier grade Linux, which says that it should be highly available for 99.999, like 6 nines, right? So when it comes to enterprise versions, these things really matter. How quickly my system is able to recover back. So that's where Fujitsu enterprise version chips in. We add features like mirroring controller, and we make the system available. We allow automatic recovery. We allow automatic promotion. We allow the setups like disaster recovery, where you have a primary center and a secondary center, and you don't have to do a PG rewind if there is a failover which is happening across the centers. So that is the kind of availability features that we work upon, along with wall duplication or wall multiplexing as well. So we allow the features where if your storage goes down in some unlucky situation or unfortunate situation, there should be a replica of the wall by the server, which can be taken up as a backup and make sure that the recovery process can be started back to the point where the last write was done. Monitoring and management, resilient logging. So all these things are really more of the availability part. So that's the thing that I was talking about, wall level multiplexing. If you have a storage level and you had just one wall archive, it goes down, then how you're going to make sure that you can recover to the last write. So a multiplexed wall record will help you in that particular scenario. That's where Fujitsu Enterprise is. Okay, so while I was talking about mirroring controller, there is another thing that we have to talk about is the application perspective as well. Though there is a perspective that we talk about, there is a standby which comes up. There is a disaster recovery center which comes up as and when requested by DBA or administrator. But there is an application connection as well, which should be able to handle these kind of scenarios. So we do have features like where I'm forgetting its name, but it's like a connection can redirect to another node. So we call it application connection switch though internally, but a client should be able to redirect to an altogether different connections. No. So it was added in 10, where a connection can be redirected to another thing. So I'm forgetting its name, but anyways, the point is that application view is taken into an account to an extent, but at the same time, we should have features in availability where we are not promoting any multi-head kind of concept in the system. So think of a situation, if you have a master and a standby, and for some reason, if your network goes down between master and standby, right? So if that goes down, you can end up having 2 masters or 2 heads in the system, right? So this is really called a split brain kind of issue, where your client can actually connect to one master, write to it, but actually there is another client which is connected to another master. So you will end up having a corrupted kind of database system. So we handle this particular feature with a sub-feature of mirroring controller called split brain functionality or handling, where we have a redundant network layer which allows detection of such issues and fence the low capacity node as soon as possible. So which means that client will no longer be able to connect to a server which is considered to be not working properly because of the network issues by our arbitration server. So it is more of advanced level features which we provide while keeping in mind the needs of the applications as well. So that's pretty much high level feature discussion about the enterprise feature that we have in Fujitsu Enterprise grade version, but that's not the end of it. We have more to it, and we are contributing to the community. We are working along with the community, and we are actively in the community, listening, understanding how the features are, what features are getting driven to, and we are contributing it back as well. So all these features, sooner or later we understand, will be getting enriched along with the community. So that's a whole other idea. That's it from my side. Thank you. Any questions?